community breathwork and meditation, and it made us think about creating a video about that very topic, breathwork. And it is a topic that Eric and I specifically really love because we both have had our own journeys in breathwork. Mine started about 12 years ago, and I have gone through a journey of ebbs and flows, ups and downs, and learning all about the world of breath work and the effects that it has on our body. So we just want to have a conversation today about breath work and really talk about what it is, why should people focus on it, what are the benefits from it, the different styles to use in different aspects of our life. And I think we should start though with you, Erica, sharing your journey of, the last probably 8 years or so going through this process and your evolution when it comes to breath work.
So whenever I think I shared this with you, I was in chiropractic school and we went to this seminar and we first learned how to breathe, and it was like crazy breathing, like how you would imagine, like, and we were doing.
Were you in the sweat lodge?
Yeah, we were doing
those? Okay, yeah. That's some out there.
Yeah, like it was like really out there. But I remember in that moment, I'm like, I have never experienced myself in this way in my life. And again, this was like 8 years ago. So I'm one of those people that I need to like kind of touch the stove to know that it's hot. So for the next, I will say probably 5 years after that, I did breath work almost every day in that exact way, that exact fashion. And one day something totally shifted for me. And I don't know if it was facilitating for people or something within myself, but all of a sudden one day I was like, what if I slowed this down? What if I slowed down my breath, slowed down my body? What would I feel? Because I knew that in the very beginning I was breathing and it was eliciting something. I knew the science behind it, but it felt like really spiritual for some reason. And it was like I was learning and feeling myself, and like this breath, whenever I would do the holds and whenever I would exhale and whenever I was inhale, I was like, I'm learning me. Like I'm learning my rhythm. And I think from that point on, I just kind of got obsessed.
Yeah.
It's something I do almost every day.
I think the cool thing is that there are the experiences you can have with breath work that are the sweat lodges, doing the 60-minute breathing that's intense. But another form of breath work is very slow breathing. There's Wim Hof breathing, there's Buteyko breathing, there's holotropic breathing. And that's the most fascinating thing, is that this breath has been around forever, right? It's the first thing you do when you come to this world, and it's the last thing you do when you exit this world. And breathing is a fundamental part of life. And what's so cool is that, for thousands of years, Eastern culture specifically have understood the power of the breath. And, the Western cultures always seem to kind of pick up on some of these Eastern culture ideas once we have this science that backs it up, which over the last 15 years or so, the science has really shown the powers of breathing and focusing on your breath and how it increases your parasympathetic response, how it increases your vagus nerve activation, your vagal tone, which is then going to lead to more connection and coherence. It's one of the most powerful tools that you can use, and you don't have to spend $1 on it. You don't have to buy something. You don't have to get a supplement. You don't have to do anything except close your eyes and focus on your breath. And so there's so many different ways to utilize it. And what we're going to do is dive into a couple different techniques in a little bit. But I did want to just, mention my story along with it as well. Like the first time I got introduced to breath work was doing a yoga class. And so I share this with you guys to understand that there's many different avenues, many different ways, but the intention is still the same. It's to create a shift and connect inward. So got introduced to it during a yoga class where the instructor was talking about pranayama, and which is essentially meaning the ability to control your breath. And if you can control the quality of your breath, the belief is you can start controlling the quality of your health and vitality and connection.
Show me how you breathe and I'll show you how you live your life. Like I've heard that quote, or actually it brings up that other quote of like, one conscious breath is the meditation. And I'm like, that was what got me into this in the first place, and maybe you as well. But yeah, when you breathe, you find your rhythm.
Yeah, and I think we live in a world where we're hustling and bustling. We have to do things. We have to go. And if you think about like the sympathetic dominance that so many people are in, when you think about someone running really fast, right? Like the breath is faster. The breath is more shallow. think of someone who's in a calm, relaxed state, they have a much longer breath, right? And what the research and science is showing, and there's an amazing book, there's a couple amazing books out there along the way. I came across a book called Breath by James Nestor, and essentially learned a lot of different things from, Eastern cultures, how they've been, utilizing breath for long periods of time, but also to the rate that we breathe and how we breathe. He shared stories in that book of like Eastern cultures that it's almost rude to breathe through your mouth when you're with people, like the mouth breather, right? Because they know in their culture that that's actually really hurting people's health and vitality. So they're focusing all about nasal breathing.
Yeah.
And then he talks about also too the parasympathetic versus the sympathetic breathing,
Yeah.
which I know you want to talk about.
Well, I was gonna say I heard that too. I think maybe after I read that, it must be where I heard that with like mouth taping at night and
Yeah.
things like that. And then I even went so far as to read a study that said whenever you're exercising, most people, like 90% of the time, don't go above that threshold where they need to start using their mouth to breathe. Actually, it's just like a sympathetic response almost. So whenever you're running or doing something and able to like kind of maintain your heart rate and you're in that zone like that, the threshold,
Yeah.
that actually you get more oxygen breathing through your nose in those moments, but we're just so adapted to like whenever I'm stressed
Yeah.
or I'm exercising that I need to breathe through my mouth. But I actually love that. And whenever I read that book too, I was like, there's something to this. Whenever I think about that, like somebody on the table, when they first come in, it's almost like if they've been having a stressful day, stressful life, stressful year, whatever it might be, I started to notice that almost first, even before I like noticed the nervous system, blood flow, oxygen in the body. It was like, where's their breath at?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm tuning into now of like really short, shallow breaths, especially ones that have been ingrained patterns, kind of tell you a story or a sign that this person has lived a little bit more in a sympathetic tone. Whereas somebody who comes on the table and they just immediately go,
Yeah.
it's like you're home.
Yeah.
This is dropping into the parasympathetic. So do you want to kind of maybe you want to share a little bit of that, like inhale, exhale? I feel like that's a really good point that people, because it's so simple. Breathwork is literally two things: inhale, exhale.
Well, well, before I get into the inhale, exhale, what that means, that big breath, right? And we get people to come into Rev that, whatever circumstances they have, it's like, first off, what are these guys doing to me? Like, why are they touching me here? Why are they telling me to breathe? A lot of, conscious thoughts happening in their head. And I actually had someone today, I saw them walking up, and as soon as she stepped into here, I saw her take a big, deep breath.
Good for her.
That's funny that you just said I'm home, because like now that I think about it, that's what was going on in her head. I'm home. I'm here. And so like instantaneously her nervous system has now been trained that when she steps into Rev, she's gonna drop into healing. She's gonna drop into a very calm, powerful state that, for then going to what you just asked, the inhales versus the exhales, very simply, every time we inhale, we activate our sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight. You got a bear in front of you, you got to attack it, or you got to do something challenging. That's the sympathetic nervous system. Every time we exhale, we increase our parasympathetic response. So, really in life, we should probably shoot for a balance about that sympathetic and parasympathetic. We need to do things and we also need to rest. But most people, because they're in this stressful state, which it's crazy how the outside world can affect our breath and our breath can affect our internal state, which affects our outside. It's finding that balance and really just first paying attention to your breath. It's like, oh yeah, I do have very shallow breathing. Oh, I'm not breathing in certain areas. So that's the first step overall, just paying attention and having awareness.
And we just say this all the time, but like your breath is truly like the doorway to your nervous system. The only automatic function you can control in your body. I mean, yes, you can slow down your heart rate and things like that, but on a really basic level, like I can't tell my kidneys to speed up. I can set intentions and all that, of course, but I can't tell my liver to slow down, but my breath I can start changing. And I think that whenever we start chatting with people, they're like, you know what, it's so interesting. I feel like sometimes I'll be at home like watching TV with my husband, my partner, and I will notice my breath is like,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, where's your brain and body at? Because it's clearly not in that room with him chilling, watching TV. And I think that's how the nervous system works. It's like, that's an old pattern. And she's in a sympathetic tone. And her breath is almost the indicator of like, where am I at right now? And it's an invite to tune in. And that's where I think my journey with breathwork evolved in the beginning of just like I wanted to like doing the breathwork like that was for meditation. Like I wanted to slow my mind down, slow my body down so I could really do that. And whenever it started to slow down, the things that I witnessed in there where I was holding tension in my body, even just in through an inhale, out through an exhale, it was enlightening to me. The times that I would catch my breath really racing or really slowing down. And then of course when you get that basics the basics of that, you can start doing it in a way of like almost like I don't want to say like cruise control, but like something stressful happens, where's my breath?
Yeah.
And then change your breath.
Yeah, it becomes more innate too.
Yes,
I
yeah.
mean, it's innate to breathe. We're gonna breathe regardless, but we're gonna move as well throughout
Mhm,
the day. We're gonna eat as well throughout the day. We're
mhm.
gonna do all these things, but there's a huge difference between being conscious about it
Yeah,
and being unconscious. And when we're unconscious, that's when these neurological patterns come up because we keep doing the same things over and over again. And then that builds up certain experiences within our own
yeah.
biology, which then leads to the multiple days, weeks, months, years of breathing in that certain way, and then that leads to certain actions too. So they've shown that a lot of people will come into rev because of mental emotional stress, PTSD, anxiety. The limbic part of their brain, the emotional part of their brain, where a lot of these fears and anxieties and all this stuff is really housed. They show 10 minutes of gentle breathing activates this limbic system. That limbic system being activated allows the energy to be released within
Mhm.
the system. And when that energy and flow is moving throughout the body can actually do something with that
Yeah.
because we drop out of what's called beta and alpha brain states. Those are those brain states that you're doing stuff throughout the day, and you can actually drop into that theta brain state. And that theta brain state, that's the bridge to the
Yeah.
subconscious where 95% of who you are actually lives. So the power in it is that a lot of people start meditating because they were told it would help their anxiety, but then they start
Yeah.
meditating. And they're like, what am I doing? How am I supposed to do this? And it's like they're trying to make something happen. But the reality is, breath work and meditation and focusing on your breath, it takes that conscious attention away from all the other stuff outside of you in this slow rhythmic breathing, however it may be, which we'll go over a couple different ways to
Yeah.
be able to utilize it. Because again, there is no wrong way to do it. It just starts slowly opening up the energy in your body. And when that energy can actually be released through the system and utilized, change begins to happen. And that's what people are looking for.
I think that's a really good point. Like for me specifically, I was like stuck in high alpha. I feel like whenever I was at least in chiropractic school, like always thinking, problem solving, like very in that student kind of mentality, I think. And that's whenever I got told to meditate. Like
You
I
meditate.
yeah, it's like I would sit down and I'm just like every thought, every anxiety, every test, everything in front of me. And I really understand now why people like say they cannot meditate. But I think breath work, it's like it's a shift in your nervous system and it allows you to even maybe go up into more of a sympathetic state, to go through that hormesis to bring you down into the parasympathetic and the deeper responses within yourself. It's like I think in the beginning like a washing machine effect of just like all my stuff kind of just gets moved around, all my energy, and then I start to slowly tune into what that means for me. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And it's like this whole it's like my own practice, I
Yeah,
feel like.
totally. And the cool thing is, like you're saying, like it can be utilized for so many different things, and you've had an evolution of it. And for people that are watching this, or like, I think a lot of people want to be like, well, what is the one thing that I
Yeah.
have to do? Really, there is no one thing that you have to do because everyone is going to respond a little bit differently. But what we're going to do is go over a few different approaches, a few different ways and styles of breathing to utilize for certain aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And, again, whatever we share with you guys, I just like coming from the place of being your own test subject, right?
Literally. Yeah.
Try things out for a day, a couple days, a couple weeks, see how your system responds. And
Mhm.
then you can start seeing if that's something that is going to be helpful and beneficial for you. Just like Erica said, and like me, like we used to do a really intense
Mhm.
active breath work all the time. I still love that
Yeah.
style of breath work because based on what you said, I think a lot of people, and again, we do this in like every couple months for our community where we guide them through a breath work, and it's got a little bit more intensity, similar like the Wim Hof method. But what it does is allows that rebound effect from that intentional sympathetic response to drop deeply into the parasympathetic response, which, by the way, side note, anyone doing active breath work
Mhm.
like Wim Hof or anything, or holotrophic breathing, the one thing that I just have an issue with sometimes is that it takes you into that sympathetic state and doesn't give any opportunity
Yeah.
or chance afterwards to just relax and go through the integration process. So the rule of thumb is that however, if you ever do some active breathing where you're breathing to move some shift some energy, like tumo breathing and heat, making up heat in your body. Whatever amount of time you do that, do the exact same time, if not more time, of slow breathing afterwards to help the body to integrate what you just did there. So let's dive in. The first thing we want to talk about is a specific technique that we can use for sleep if anyone has sleep issues.
And I kind of want to like you're saying it exactly. I think of it, the nervous system in two branches: parasympathetic, rest and digest; sympathetic, fight or flight, essentially like high and low, or excuse me, low and high. And whenever I think about that, like it's your opportunity to tune into yourself. So whenever I think about breath work for sleep specifically, it's tapping into that parasympathetic state. And what typically whenever I think about parasympathetic or that rest and digest, it's longer exhales, breathing through our nose, not through our mouth. And I think about that like whenever I'm calm, like what am I actually breathing through? And whenever I'm relaxed, what am I actually breathing through? And just to kind of double down on that. But I tell people all the time, like you can do this without guidance, without a person facilitating this. This is your breath. You always have it. We do have awesome classes to really show people the ins and outs. But for sleep specifically, I like to do something every night. I do like a timer. It drives people crazy.
People, we're not going to name any names, Lauren.
Crazy, but a timer for like 10 minutes right before I go to sleep almost every night. Yeah, I know. But it's like I breathe in for, and I don't count this anymore. It's kind of just natural, but I breathe in for 4 seconds, something shorter on the inhale, hold for about 7, and then a really long exhale for like 9 seconds. So whenever I'm breathing in for 4 full seconds through my nose, holding at the top for 7 seconds, and then breathing out my nose again for 9 seconds like that. It can be a little bit more challenging to go the whole way to 9 seconds, but do your best and just keep those exhales longer, and you'll start to find it's not just that one breath, but do that for 3 minutes. Start with 3 minutes. Do that for 3 minutes and see how you feel afterwards. I think what you're gonna start to find is that your body, your heart rate will start slowing down, your blood pressure will start calming down a little bit, your mind will start slowing down a little bit, and kind of try to get lost in the rhythm of that cycle. Maybe counting in the beginning is exactly what you need to do. But set a timer, 4 seconds in, 7-second hold, 9-second exhale, repeat, and that's what I do for sleep.
And if you can use a timer. I don't use a timer. I just do it in my head when I used to do that style of breathing a whole lot more. And why the numbers are helpful, especially for someone sleeping. Why do people have trouble falling asleep most of the time? Is because their mind is wandering, right? And so by focusing on the numbers, or as you're going to get into another, style of breathing, it's about bringing your attention outside, away from everything that's happening for tomorrow, what you're regretting from the past, what you got to do in the morning, and get the kids ready. And is my wife going to hear this alarm going off, right? So it takes the attention off of that, the things that cause the cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, the anxiety to go into our body, and the stress to not be able to fall asleep. And it takes that attention to just your breathing and to just slowing things down. And what I find is that if you just keep, you talk about doing it for a few minutes, I find that people that have trouble with sleeping, just keep focusing on that. Just and then your mind will wander, and then go back to the numbers. Pause, and then long exhale, and you almost find this rhythm, and then before you know it, you fall asleep, and you wake up the next day like, oh yeah, I was doing that counting, and I was able to kind of just totally separate
when I stop the counting in my brain is when I know that I'm in the right state.
And if you find yourself like, then you stop, you're in the right state, and then your head starts spinning again, just go right back to your breath. That's what's cool. Your breath is a tool that never ever leaves you.
I love that.
So the next one, let's talk about people that have high levels of anxiety, and maybe they're still making shifts and changes. Maybe they're significantly better, but in the moment, something happened and it sparked an old response within them, and they're feeling this fight or flight. They're feeling this anxiety. What can people do in that moment?
I love that because I think breathwork, if I had one caveat for people with a lot of anxiety will tell us this often. When they do any kind of like Wim Hof breathing, you've kind of really touched this, but they do a breathing that almost brings them into that sympathetic state. It actually triggers anxiety for them, or they'll start to feel like their heart rate, whenever their heart rate gets sped up like that, old patterns in their nervous system say, I'm not safe. So if somebody has anxiety, this is actually developed by the Navy SEALs, and it was so that they could remain calm and the the battles that they were doing and the training that they were doing in the very beginning, but it's called box breathing. And I've actually done this for somebody in our office. I don't even know if I've shared this with you. She came in and she was with her mom actually, and she started sharing about so many things going on that it triggered something within her. And before you knew it, she like could not catch her breath. She was having a visceral panic attack in front of me. And I was like, absolutely, like, she's moving through this, and I'm like, the best thing I can do for her in this moment right now, I'm just gonna connect her back to her breath. Like that's what I did. So I did something. This is for anxiety, and this is exactly what I showed her, but box breathing. And what this is meant to do is not necessarily if you're extremely like high up like that in those emotions. If you keep breathing, whether it's trying to calm down, you're a little bit too high for that. So they actually recommend something almost even, where the inhales it becomes like a really even rhythm, so your body doesn't either spike or crash. But as she's having a panic attack, literally in the midst of our consult room, I'm like, so we're gonna breathe in for 4 seconds and in for 4 seconds. And I like to trace the box. It's called box breathing for a reason, but in for 4 seconds and inhale through your nose, holding for 4 seconds, exhaling through your mouth for 4 seconds on that one, and then holding for 4 seconds again. Again, it's like super even, super rhythmic, where your body can actually start finding like a baseline or like a stability again. But that will calm down your nervous system like almost instantly. I do that if I'm feel like we had people like working on the space next door, and like we have a meditative space. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to lose it. And I'm like, I'm not gonna get anything done if I show up across in the next space and just like get this done with or stop doing this. And
This is a quiet place.
like back at them. So I'm like, I'm having a little bit of anxiety for everybody in here that was going through the process or adjusting them. I just take some box breathing. It was literally like 4 rounds of that. I just did a little bit of that. I go in there and I'm like, I already feel grounded. I already feel centered. And from that state, I knew that I could actually like have those conversations. But again, I like timers. It's much more intuitive as you go on, but in the beginning, I like to almost like make it as simple and as easy as possible. So box breathing, look that up. There's so many studies on that too, but 4 seconds in, 4 second hold, 4 second exhale.
And thinking back on when I first started this, and this might be you if you're going to try these things. Just a little side note: the 4-7-9, the longer exhales, the holds, the exhale at the very end after the hold, like near the end, in the beginning for me, and this may be for you, maybe not. It's almost really uncomfortable. It's like left and like almost causes stress in myself. But what's really cool is just you keep just doing it, and at first it's hard, and then you soften into it and you soften into it. And then like I remember doing some breath work down the road that like my being able to exhale out was like for like 6 seconds at most. It was like I don't have any other more breath inside of me. That's all the parasympathetics that I can get out right now. Inhales I can inhale for like 12 seconds, but like getting it all out, like that push of extra oxygen out was so hard. But then eventually I softened, and eventually I was like able to really expand, overdoing it over a course of several weeks. So just know when you start doing this, it may be challenging, but just keep practicing, keep doing it, and don't judge yourself because you're doing something new and doing something different, and it will get better over time.
There's like so many studies on this, and you really mentioned it that we become like mouth breathers and we want to breathe through our nose, but there's something called a CO2 tolerance test that I read about that on the exhale. And I used to be the same way. I'm like, I love the inhales and I loved holding and I loved all the energy up in the top of my head like that. But actually, it's on the exhale. And they say, like, if you can exhale for 40 seconds, I don't know if you've ever tried doing that, but you start breathing a few times and then on the exhale, they'll time you. And they literally, it's like how much stress we can actually accumulate in our body and keep and maintain that neutral state. Like, it's based on our oxygen and how that's dispersed. But I was like, I want to be able to exhale for 40 seconds.
You know, that but the Bateko guy, he was a scientist, doctor. Um, either Ukraine or Russia in that area. It was in the book Breath. And I just remember he figured out this breathing technique and how much better it was for the human body. And he trained the runners, I believe, and like shaved off so much time. And they got actually because they were able, their oxygen levels were greater because they were actually extending their exhales and not taking in so much oxygen, and more energy production was actually be able to be created.
I'm going to go off on a tangent, but when I met your cousin, who is the deep sea fisherman.
Okay, yeah.
He was like, you guys do the breath work and whatnot. And he's like, I've been looking to do this. And what he said was, I shared this with him and he reached out to me on Facebook literally like 2 months later. And he was like trying to hold his breath for a really long time underwater. He goes like with no tank or anything. He just free dives with like a spear, I think is
Yeah.
what he was telling me. Yeah.
He's
I'm
wild.
like, it's wild. It's like a Florida boy. But anyways, he was like, what he realized was that whenever he was doing this, he was doing all inhales. Like he
Yeah.
was like inhaling and doing all these techniques, but it was on the exhale where his mind actually got into a place that he was like, I'm actually okay. Like I don't need to breathe. On the inhales, he was like, I could connect with that, but on the exhales, my body like dropped into a really calm space, and it increased his time by I don't know how much time, but
Yeah, it's amazing what this breath can do. And again, we're talking about different aspects, different avenues to look at your breath. No doubt we're talking about more. What we've learned, especially with like helping people through the integration process, is more than often than not, let's focus on longer exhales to really increase the parasympathetic. But there are times in life where it ain't time to go take a nap. It ain't time to heal because we got to get something done. We got to get pumped up. We got to get
yeah.
energized. And I love this because, I played sports like back in the day and, baseball game or whatever it may be. And like to get pumped up, I remember going, just like getting my breath going. And I like just innately knew like, I got to get myself,
Yeah.
pumped up for something. Or, even when we have a class or a seminar and I'm excited, I want to get my energy high. Like I learned that through Tony Robbins' style of breath, which you're going to touch on.
Yeah. I don't know what he does exactly, but what I do, and I think what you do, is whenever I'm breathing and people ask all the time, they're like, so I have no energy actually, and it's hard for me to do really anything. And what should I do? Because breath work for them is more, they want energy. Like you can get it, you can use this to calm your energy, move your energy. It can shift so many things. But for me, that's exactly what I like to do. I like inhaling and I like sharp exhale, inhale, exhale. And that is actually one of the hardest breaths for me personally. Like I can exhale for a really long time, like I said, but the inhales, I almost like pass out. I feel like I almost get too much energy. So I always recommend,
Passing
yeah,
out.
I recommend this one almost like seated in a chair like this, but it's almost like just to really like put your feet on the ground and hands in a good space, but like it's breathing in through your nose. It's almost like a sharp, like it's not like, it's like,
Mhm.
and never a fully letting it, because this piece too, like a lot of our sympathetic nerves are like right here. So we want to keep our breath actually like right here and almost bouncing or like fluctuating between this like parasympathetic space and this parasympathetic space. So whenever I start doing that, I'll start feeling it almost like pulsate. I'll feel like almost like a pulsation right here. And it's like, and full inhale, exhale. Like if you start cheating on the inhale on that one, you will not be able to exhale. Or if you start going a little too long on the exhale, you will not be able to inhale. So to actually maintain that, for people do that for like, I watched a video of Gabby Bernstein doing that for like 17 minutes.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I want
I
to
got
try
a minute.
that.
I got a minute.
Yeah, like, I got like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But I was like, no way is she gonna keep going. But literally through this entire thing, she was doing it. And if you even want to take it a step farther, you can start moving your body too, because I think the whole point of this is to move energy. One of the ways we move energy is, of course, our breath, but of course, our body too. And you're gonna feel it. Like whenever I start doing it, I like want to move my arms with it. I want to move things in like this area. I'll start doing like or something like that. But you will start to feel like a flush of energy in your body as well.
Full disclosure, first time you do this, and maybe every time you do this, maybe do it by yourself because snot rockets may be present, and you don't want to be doing it in your office cubicle next to Julie, and the snot comes out, and she's like, "You got a little something right
Yeah.
there." But it's like I think about also too, like utilizing this. And you say, okay, well, do you really want to do that? Activate your sympathetic nervous system. There's a huge difference between life throwing us a stressful situation and us not being prepared and what that stress actually causes within our body. But just like extreme cold or extreme heat or putting ourselves in situations that are uncomfortable, that is a conscious choice that you're putting in there. And the body responds differently to that stress response when you are consciously putting yourself in that state to allow you to be more focused in a certain situation. Like that's what I think about, like an emergency situation. Like when we relax, our mind is open, we're free flowing. It's like we don't have a care in the world. But if there's something we need to focus on, get done with, like that's when that sympathetic response is actually pretty important and we can focus and laser in. It's like an accident's happened. It's like your sympathetic's going on. You're going to really focus on what you need to do in that moment right here, right now. So this is a tool that you can utilize to just shift your energy if you're needing to move into that
I feel
place.
like that's like the breath becomes like I want my brain and my body to be teammates. Like if my brain is in a really low slump, I can start using my breath, using my body to start shifting it. Or if my brain is in a crazy anxiety loop, I can start using my breath, my body to start calming down as well in that moment. So I love that.
And the last one.
And the last one is my absolute favorite. And
What is that?
this has just been my own development. This is, well, of course, for the nervous system, of course. This was tailored specifically for our people.
I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, I was gonna say what it was first, but the nervous system breath work, because after working with people over the last several years, I was like, there's really not a lot of breath work actually specifically designed for the nervous system. And what I mean by that is actually tuning in to these energy centers. We have a really awesome YouTube video where I guide you through like an entire 20-minute thing on that. Yeah. But this one is by far my favorite, and we call it central channel breathing, because essentially your nervous system is this center up through your body. Energy comes up the back, down the front, and whenever we start moving our breath where attention goes, energy flows, we can actually start activating a lot of this stored, stuck, stagnant energy that already lives within our body. So instead of, going through a situation and like, I need more energy, well, that's actually already within you, and to start moving it up through your body rather than just holding it in really low centers and holding a lot of tension, this will actually start opening this channel. So what I like to do is I like to fully sit up straight, like almost like full erect spine. And I try to move as little as humanly possible for this, because again, I like to see where I'm holding tension in my body. And at this point for me, whenever I'm holding tension, it's so micro, like it's like I feel my lower rib just kind of slightly like that, or my hip might be a little bit turned, but it's almost those micro tunes that I'm tuning into now. And that comes from like almost micro breath. So instead of that really big breath that I used to do of like, it's now like I barely look like I'm moving. I barely look like I'm breathing. And the point is to almost feel the oxygen even moving in through your nostrils. But what you're going to start doing is you're going to close your eyes and you're going to start breathing in from that first center. And if you don't know the neural centers, we're going to do a whole video on that too. But neural centers, we have 7 of them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and at the top of our head. So energy moving up from that bottom center to the top of our head, and just holding for a second at that top. So breathing in through our nose. I actually like to do this for 15 seconds. The longer you can inhale, the longer you can exhale. I would start with something like 10. Start with like 10 seconds, but breathing in for 10 seconds. And it's a really slow to be able to breathe for a full 10 seconds. You have to have a lot of breath control, because if you just start breathing, you're not going to make it to 10. So breathing in almost as small and specifically as possible up to the top of our head, and holding just for 1 second at that top, hold, and then exhaling down the front into those centers again. And what you're going to start to find is you're going to start to feel almost like your entire body from top to bottom gets connected. So whenever even a slight movement moves up in my this upper diaphragm or this diaphragm or this diaphragm, all 3 diaphragms start moving in unison with it. So it's almost like whenever I start breathing, I want to be as still as possible, as slow as possible, as intentional as possible, because as I do this, it's like blood flow starts going into my body, into like the tips of my fingers, starts bumping into emotions I haven't felt in a long time, or tensions that I haven't felt in a long time. So I use this almost as like my own research of myself, but I like to do this one with no timer, nothing specific, but breathing in, inhaling for as long as I can do it at a full inhale, and then exhaling for a full exhale. Like I said, I'm at about 15 seconds right now, and I do that a lot.
Yeah.
Like I do that all the time.
Yeah.
But nervous system, central channel breathing.
I mean, we wouldn't be in alignment if we didn't talk about one of our favorite breathworks focused on the nervous system, because it is everything. It controls and coordinates every bit of your life. It's how you take in every piece of information. So by giving this conscious attention and conscious awareness to slow down your nervous system, to calm, those things tend to then just show up in even greater ways. And I will end with just thinking about the act of breath work and the community that's been created within breath work. Yeah. Not only on the positive side, but also on the it can turn some people off kind of side as well. Like I think 8 years ago, I did like my first like active like breath work thing where there was like a sound bowl and someone guiding me, and it was heavy, and it was like an amazing experience that I had that shifted some things. And the guy that was there, he said something like, in the next decade, breathwork's going to be the thing. Breathwork is going to be really, really popular. And I always remember that, like saying like, oh yeah, it's like that guy's talking about it. And then this, and, oh, more people, more people, more people. And then now like everyone's doing it. But then there's also like it's almost like I love CrossFit, but it's like a CrossFit vibe too. Like, do you breath work? Do you Wim Hof? Have you done any Wim Hof? Have you done that? Which is like awesome and great. It's gotten a lot of attention, but like you're not doing breath work to just say, hey, I did breath work, right?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it? You're doing it hopefully because you're wanting to make better choices, better decisions, be in a better coherent state, not react to our children or our partners, be at a more place of peace, to heal. So just remember, you're doing this if you decide to take some of this information to better your life. And there is, and I'll end it with this from my end, there's no wrong way
No wrong way.
of doing this. You will get better and better. And what is better, anyways, is just being more attuned and more aware. And there'll be sometimes it's really nice and sometimes it was really uncomfortable. But the consistent actions of that, you are setting a intention and a vibration and bringing more awareness to, little pieces of who you are that have been hidden for a while. And as you just said, those blind spots will come up throughout this process, and that's probably one of the most beautiful things about this thing.
One of my favorite tools. It's a regulation tool, and it's absolutely one of my favorite because it's, like you said, always with us, completely free. So,
well, I love this conversation so much. We hope you found value in this. Again, utilize this information, maybe watch it again a couple times, go through some of these different things. If you have trouble with sleep or anxiety, or you want to focus on your nervous system or energy, we'll be doing more videos throughout the days, weeks, months, and years about breathing. But if you enjoyed this video, please like, please subscribe, share with a friend, and we cannot wait to see you on the next one.